In 2014, 10 years ago this summer, furry fandom lost one of its most talented artists when James Hardiman passed away. He was most well known for his Skunkworks girls, Lori, Onyx, and Natasha, and the series he had built up around them that incorporated irreverent humor, intricate artwork, and YIF. But there was another character that he was developing that would eventually develop a cult following of her own. The succubus known as Penance, unfortunately, never was able to develop to the extent that James seems to have wanted due to his untimely passing. But there are some notes from some chats that he had had online with fans who were asking questions that gave an insight into the character and what his overall plans for her were to be. So that's what I'm going to be reading from for this video. The commentary I'll be reading from this point on is the words of James Hardiman himself, the artist and creator of Penance, but I would encourage you to check out his artwork that still survives online on E6 or Furfinity for further context. Character Notes by James Hardiman. They don't have families in quite the same way that we do. Males and females, incubi and succubi, are each fighting for dominance, as is their nature. So any sort of breeding is quick, violent, and very infrequent. Mothers tend to watch out for their daughters throughout their lives, maternal instinct, but sons will often fight with fathers once they are old enough to challenge their status. Penance doesn't have any siblings. She kills her father later in her story. Her mom still has her back though. Think medieval, upper and lower classes, a ruling party consisting of one incubus and one succubus. They make the rules, and everyone has to follow them. They can be challenged by the commoners, but that usually results in either death or, in Penance's case, punishment and banishment. The elders, the king and queen, are generally quite ancient and far more powerful than anyone else. They seem to live by the rule, might makes right. These creatures can live for about 1 million years of our time, so we would likely refer to them as immortal, although they do eventually die. Penance is only about 5,000 of our years old, so she's by comparison about 20 of their years. Not even demons know where they go when they die, since none have ever come back to tell. She had the unfortunate habit of developing feelings for others, which is apparently very, very taboo in her realm. Also, there's no such thing as heaven or hell in these stories, just different realities that may be better or worse than the one a person is currently in. I try not to put any sort of religious stuff into these stories since I do not believe in any sort of religion myself. If an angel can fall, why not too can a demon be raised? No, she can't pass the memories off to someone else. Once she absorbs the bad memories, they're hers. Of course, that doesn't mean she can't use them to further fuel her rage. Not all angels and saints were good, and not all demons and devils were bad. Okay, so Penance, which isn't her real name, but that may or may not ever be revealed, is a succubus. There are several pictures of her normal demon form in the gallery. She would normally exist in a physical realm just like ours, in this demonic form. Since she is a succubus, she essentially travels from one reality to another, changing her appearance as necessary to appeal to her victims. A succubus is a female demon which has sex with males while they sleep. Since she isn't physically in the same realm as her victim, she can change her appearance to resemble whatever form the male body finds most attractive. Think out-of-body phenomena. Normally, a succubus will attach itself to a victim, which will become her familiar. She continues visiting the male, slowly draining his life energy over time, eventually killing him. But in Penance's case, she made the mistake of actually having feelings for her familiar. He eventually died of old age, not from her repeated visitations. This was discovered by her superiors, who decided to punish her by trapping her into a physical body which would not be suitable for sex, something a succubus needs to survive. As a joke, they stuck her into the form of a little female bear who was killed 20 years earlier, mostly because the bear form had a few similarities to Penance's demon form, at least in terms of color and some patterns. Still possessing many of her paranormal abilities, she eventually learns that there are people who exist who have no issues with engaging in sexual activities with a kid. This doesn't bother her since she is only looking to survive. However, part of her punishment, besides being stuck in a stubby bear body, was that she was forbidden to ever have feelings for anyone she slept with. To aid in this aspect of her punishment, she would be required to kill whomever she had sex with, thereby preventing her from ever caring for someone ever again. It just so happens in most cases that she's killing bad guys in this process. Things end up changing for her when she tracks down a future victim, who surprises her by trying to sever her spinal cord with a knife. She tosses the guy into the wall and holds him there, but is distracted by something she detects in a closet in the nearest room. Upon closer investigation, she finds the clothing of numerous kids that this guy has apparently molested or killed. Every piece of clothing she touches makes her experience the kid's final moments. Distraught and enraged, she mutilates the guy horribly, and then decides to actively seek out individuals engaging in this sort of behavior. She's not a good guy per se, but she does good things, even if they are regarded as barbaric or illegal by most cultures. She still possesses many of her paranormal abilities, and often uses them in conflicts, but those abilities come at a price. They consume more energy, which she must then replace by killing and terrifying her victim. I think she goes after the perverts on purpose now, having been witness to the trauma that they can cause. As stated above, she's not a good guy, but she does things that many may consider good. Let me know if you have any other questions. I'm going to try and catch up on replies tonight. Time is kind of short right now, but more information can be made available if you need it. The only folks that she can get sex from is adults, and since she's in a kid's body, the only people who would find such a form remotely attractive would be the pedos. Part of her punishment is also that she must kill whomever she has sex with, as a way to prevent her from ever loving someone again. Trust me, she's not exactly enjoying her time in that form, but she's doing what she can to make it work for her. Here's the part that will really mess with your mind. Is she really the age shown in the picture above, or is she just assuming that form for the sake of the viewer? I don't want to get stuck drawing vapid pinup characters devoid of personality. I want readers to care for the characters and to be drawn into the story. If events of a story make the reader upset or anxious, then I must be doing something right. Normally, the succubi would take a little at a time, over a period of weeks, months, or even years. As they continue to drain their prey, the victim becomes weaker, but also gets addicted to the sensation the succubi give them. After a while, of course, the victim dies, as the body becomes too weak or sick to continue. As for Penance, her mistake was actually caring for her victim and refusing to be the cause of his demise. It seems the succubi aren't allowed to have feelings for their prey. So as punishment, she was forced into the physical form which would not allow her to have any sort of sexual activity which the succubus needs to survive. Another aspect of her punishment as a brutal lesson was that anyone she was sexually with would have to die by her hand immediately after the act, preventing her from caring about anyone ever again. Luckily for her, though, she found out there are certain perverts who like them on the young side, and no one would really fuss much if those people disappeared. The once-alive girl, named Penelope, Penny was her nickname, Marshall, in the story, the reader will also see her parents and younger sister now in her mid-20s when the cops go to her gravesite. It's kind of complicated. She's not possessing the body of a kid. She was forced into her physical form, which is a damn near perfect copy of a kid who had been murdered about 20 years prior. In fact, after detectives traced back DNA evidence from her crime scenes, they learned the owner of the DNA has been dead for quite a while. The grave is researched and the body is even exhumed. So they're trying to figure out how a long-dead form buried in the ground can have an exact duplicate running around that hasn't aged a day in 20 years. Penance's actual demonic form only exists physically, in her natural realm. She assumes other forms when she is engaging in sexual behavior with someone. Since the male victim is asleep during these encounters, she has no need of a physical body, and can therefore assume any form the victim finds desirable. Whether or not she has ever returned to her natural demonic form is unknown at this time. She obviously isn't too keen on being stuck in a physical body which is bound to the limitations of physical reality. She won't actually make any appearances until Caterwaul 4. That particular story is sort of an unofficial mission, since the team is not being paid to apprehend anyone, nor are they working alongside the police, at least not until later in the story, where their mission coincides with what the cops are doing about a seemingly unrelated series of incidents. The actual character, her physical self in any case, was a second grader who was brutally killed over 20 years ago. Valencia wasn't even in high school when the bear was killed. Her murderer was never apprehended, and the case eventually went into the cold case files. Her parents had her buried in a local cemetery, and she was their only daughter. After returning home from a job, Tamara from Caterwall has a call from her dad about her little sister, who is blind since birth, and in a special school for kids with issues like that. Turns out she was harassed by someone she wasn't able to identify, even by scent. Caterwall and some government agencies utilize a chemical compound that helps mask their scents, making them difficult to identify and/or track. The group starts probing around to see what they can turn up, since Tamara's sister can't describe her assailant. Around this time, there are numerous grisly murders happening all over the country, some of which are several states apart. Several occur in Florida in a very short period of time, and the cops haven't yet connected all the cases to one suspect. Caterwall is called back to Florida to assist detectives Frank Stone and Leander Cassell, who work with Caterwall frequently in this investigation. They eventually learn that all these murders are indeed being performed by one person, who happens to be the 6-year-old bear who died over 20 years earlier. DNA tests confirm the match. The original body, however, is still in its grave, so everyone is left scratching their heads trying to figure out how this is being done. Penance in this case is actually a very nasty negative entity who apparently did something wrong. She is punished by being forced into the physical body of a young murder victim. But unknown to her punishers, Penance starts taking matters into her own hands and finds ways to get what she needs to stay alive in this new world. Even when the cops eventually get her, she just replies, "What court in this land is going to seek the death penalty for a little girl?" She exists in the physical realm, but because her true self is most certainly very paranormal, she's able to use some of these abilities to work things to her advantage. And yes, what she does happens to coincide with a string of events initially uncovered by Tamara's sister's incident, but I won't give the whole thing away. Needless to say, she has abilities far above what a normal person would have, and only preys upon a certain kind of criminal. Normal folks have nothing to worry about. She just looks like a cute kid to them, albeit one with odd markings. No, Penance isn't anything like Alma Wade, no torment or anything. The physical form she's using isn't really her own, it was actually chosen by the individual punishing her as a means to prevent her from getting what she needs to stay alive. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and Penance finds out that she can make that form work to her advantage. She's not an experiment, nor is she superpowered, she's just not of the world she gets placed in. Any abilities she may seem to possess are just extensions of her normal self. They just seem special because she's using them in the physical world, which is not where she naturally resides. I tend to steer clear of the religious take on demons and such. The original Greek word daemon meant they were intermediary spirits between humankind and the gods, and could be either good or evil. Certain religions that didn't take well to pagan beliefs made all daemons evil. My view of Penance and her kind is that they exist in a world just as solid and real as ours, but rely upon traveling to other realities to get the energies they need to continue surviving. They aren't necessarily bad per se, their society is just different than ours. An incubus or succubus would normally drain the life energy of their victim over a period of months or years. They would not normally kill the victim outright. The victim must desire them first. After all, it takes two to tango. Nor would they do other deeds which one might assume a demon would do, cause chaos, brutal carnage, killing just to kill, etc. In a sense, she is a good entity though. She may not be able to change what she is, or what her nature is, but she's not out killing for the sake of chaos. If you think about it, she's being as good as I suspect a demon could act, which undoubtedly is pissing off those folks who tried to punish her this way.